you've all booked on this event, which is through ourselves, which is Clara Rose Consultancy. What we provide is basically career services to legal professionals. So we do everything from if you want to move jobs, if you want to look at the market or understand the market and have more information, or discuss salary reviews and this sort of thing. We're really here as a resource for legal professionals. We tend to help people who are qualified rather than people who are looking to qualify, but obviously there's a line that crosses over there. And we've been doing these online events sort of since lockdown, really. We used to do more live events in person, then we moved them online. We just do them on subjects that we think people will find interesting. And the SQE is absolutely that, where I think there's not enough information out there. There's not enough awareness and understanding of the new system and how it's going to operate. So hence the reason we booked this event today. But what I would ask during the event, if you could keep your cameras and your microphones off, that would be fabulous. If you've got any questions, which I'm sure you will have, there's a big section at the end for questions and answers. So if you could type your questions into the chat function, then what will happen is at the end, I can actually read them out and get them answered. And we have already said if we need to, we can run over a bit, even if people need to leave at 2 to get questions answered. So there's lots of scope there. But yes, without further ado, over to Ingemar, who has been more up to date with the SQE than me and has been helping lots of people get through their qualifying work experience. And has spoken to the SRA about this in detail. So over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about this.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Clara. My name's Ingemar Hunnings, and I recognise one or two of the firms, so it's good to see you. So I will indeed be doing what I can to throw some light into this area. A little bit about myself. I am actually a solicitor, still having a practicing certificate, but no longer in truth practicing. I was in practice for 24 years, 14 as an equity partner. I was a department head and board member. So that's the professional career. Pardon me. And now I run a management consultancy called HCL, Hunnings Consultancy, imaginatively. And what we do is we provide business support for law firms. So we have well over 500 law firm clients, and we are helping them with the business of running their business. My conclusion, having been in practice, was that most partners were more interested in client work than necessarily running their businesses. And so we do a lot of work with various case management systems, with compliance, a lot of compliance support, and basically we're like a one-stop shop for business support for law firms. One of my firms, as so often happens, our clients introduce us to other things we could be doing, and one of my firms reached out to me about the SQE and the qualifying work experience. I also give talks at universities, so students were asking me as well. So this is how I got into it. And so I started talking with the SRA about this in July 2020. And I was liaising very closely with them as they were bringing the rules in, particularly with regard to the confirming of qualifying work experience. And since then, I have had the SRA go through the website and suggest one or two changes. They know fully what I'm doing. They've even commented on some of my posts. Yes, I wouldn't say that I'm endorsed by them at all. They wouldn't want me to say that, but they do know fully what's going on here. So how does it fit in with what we're doing? Our law firm clients find the acquisition of talent really an important part of their business. This has a major impact on that. And the change from the old LPC way of qualifying for solicitors to the SQE is a massive change in the marketplace for the providers of legal services. And so law firms need to be up to date with this and to know what's going on, because it is happening. And we're now in the transition period for the LPC to disappear. Someone starting a degree, let's say last autumn, cannot qualify through the LPC route. So this will be affecting you. And the acquisition of talent, especially in these times when we're near full employment, is a key factor for you to be able to deliver your legal services. So what I'm going to do is go through explaining what the process is. What is the SQE? And then I'm going to focus a little bit on some of the different aspects of them. Look at how it interacts with the apprenticeship scheme, which is really quite interesting. I can touch on people who want to qualify as foreign qualified lawyers as then English and Welsh solicitors. And as Clara said, there's a big Q&A session where I'm happy to try and pick up questions and clarify things with people. I'm going to share my screen, and I hope this works. As I was saying, I'm more familiar with Zoom than with Teams, only because I'm dealing with lots of people who don't necessarily have Microsoft, so this makes it easier. Anyway, off we go. And I'm hoping that this is going to be showing my website with the various pages on here, and this looks okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it all looks good.
Fantastic. Okay, there are 4 elements to the SQE. Okay, and by the way, I should say, put aside your thoughts of the LPC route. This is different. Okay, it's not a modification of it, it is different. Okay, and you can qualify through the LPC route or the SQE route, but it's not a pick and mix between the two. And so therefore don't necessarily try to match one to the other. The SQE route, there are 4 elements that you need to have to qualify as a solicitor, and the qualification is absolutely valid. The big difference is now that instead of the training provider, as in the University of Law, the BPP, or some university, saying that you have passed the LPC, and then a law firm saying that you're fit to practice, it's now the regulatory body, the SRA, which has taken back the responsibility to say whether someone is fit to practice as a fully qualified solicitor. Okay, and when they qualify through the SQE route, they are a fully qualified solicitor, entitled to practice because their regulatory body, the SRA, has said that they are. Okay, there are 4 elements that someone wishing to qualify needs to complete. They need to have a degree or degree equivalent. Notice it does not need to be a law degree. There is no requirement to do a GDL or some other cross qualification. They just need to have a degree or degree equivalent. And you'll notice I'm using our website. There's lots of articles about this in here, as well as all of our other services. But you can use the search in here to find stuff. So if you want to pick up information, go to the website and you can just search for stuff in here. Validating your law degree. If people are asking you, I've tried to digest what's on the SRA website into an easily understandable bit, so you can validate it, and they're using things like the ENIC and such like to do that. So it could be it could be a degree that's acquired in Hong Kong or I don't know, Guatemala or something. It just needs to be a degree or degree equivalent. Okay. Second element is that you need to pass the exams. The third element is that you need to have 2 years full-time equivalent qualifying work experience, which is confirmed to the SRA by an SRA regulated solicitor. So that's the QWE. And the fourth element is that you need to sign a certificate of good standing. So that's between you and the candidate in the SRA. That's no different from now under the old LPC route. Okay. Terminology. Under the LPC route, you had trainee solicitors. The sort of terminology that seems to be evolving under the SQE is aspiring solicitor. You can call someone a trainee solicitor if you want, but it has no meaning within the SQE route. It has no special meaning whatsoever. Okay. Right. So the first element, someone needs to have a degree or degree equivalent. Second element, they need to pass the exams. What are the exams? SQE1 and SQE2. Set and run, they're set by the SRA, they're run by Kaplan on their behalf. The SQE1 is 2 exams, functioning legal knowledge, so FLK 1 and 2, 180 multiple choice questions, 10 hours of exam time. This has been sat twice so far. The pass rate, it seems to be that of the people who sat it, it's about 55%. So it's equivalent or slightly tougher than the LPC. And the multiple choice questions, there's usually 2 or more that could be right, and they're very granular, like what part of what form would you fill in, let's say for the land registry on this particular set of scenario, this scenario. There's a cost. Okay. It covers these areas of law, which is very similar to what was covered under the LPC. I do not know why it doesn't cover family law. I've asked the SRA, they pointedly ignored me. Bizarre, but it maps, I think, pretty closely to the LPC. Now then, so that's the SQE one, which can be taken in the Pearson VUE test centres in the UK and internationally. Okay. You cannot apply for the SQE2 until you pass the SQE1. The SQE2 is testing you not on so much as on the knowledge as on the application of the knowledge into real life scenarios. And there are 16 oral and written tests, so 12 are written, 4 are oral. I've heard of some people coming out of the oral ones in tears. Yeah, that takes place over 4 or 5 days, I think it is. It's testing you on the knowledge, yes, on the application of the knowledge, and on your skills as a solicitor. This is the end exam, after which the SRA says, so long as the other elements are done, whether you're fit to practice or not. We've had this sat twice now, results from the first one only so far. Of the people who sat the SQE2, there were 77% passed. Okay, not the pass rate, but that's how many passed. Okay, so we have plenty of people out there who have now qualified as English and Welsh solicitors through the SQE route, and I would please beg you to regard them the same as any other qualified solicitor. Is exactly the same level as far as the SRA is concerned. The SQE2, you do have to travel to the UK to sit currently as things stand, and there are examination sites in Cardiff, Manchester, and in London. So there is a price for that. There, if I just quickly look this up here, I have put a page on the website for training providers in here, just as a way of just giving people some information. The non-university ones, there are other providers than the old traditional University of Law and BPP, who are the most expensive, but there are others as well. I don't think anyone can say they're better than anyone else because it's such early days at the moment. So that's just an information page. Okay, qualifying work experience. What is qualifying work experience? This is different, and this is the thing that people struggle with most, I think, certainly from law firms. You are no longer required to provide a training contract. You don't have all of the paraphernalia, the burden on you for running the training contract, because that's not required. The SRA is testing people's competence through the exams, but they want people to acquire the soft skills. They're decoupling that from firms. People can acquire those soft skills, which they call qualifying work experience, in all sorts of different ways, not just in a traditional 2-year patch of time with a law firm. So qualifying work experience, it's 2 years full time. What is full time? There is no definition. So it's down to the judgment of the confirming solicitor. Okay, so my personal view is 30 to 35 hours a week would be full time, or more than that, would obviously count as full time as well. So it's a question of maths then. Okay, so if you're doing 16 hours a week qualifying work experience, it would take 4 years to get your 2 years full time equivalent. Right, so who confirms the qualifying work experience? Only solicitors regulated by the SRA. So solicitors. It can't be barristers. It can't be a foreign qualified lawyer. I guess because the SRA is effectively outsourcing that, because they don't have the sufficient resource to do all of that. they're making sure there's a chain of authority, I suspect, and control through there. So the process, if you're in a law firm, is and you're just getting a solicitor, or if you're a solicitor in a law firm and an aspiring solicitor wants you to confirm their qualifying work experience, is quite straightforward. You need to have seen the work, okay? You need to have been satisfied that there are no issues in their character and conduct which would make them unsuitable to be a solicitor. And then the aspiring solicitor would go to their My SRA portal on the SRA website, put in your details. You'll get an email which will ask you to confirm their qualifying work experience. Click on that, answer the questions. That will prompt an email from the SRA to the aspiring solicitor to say it's been done. Quite simple and straightforward. Now, people can reach out to an external confirming solicitor to do the confirmation if they wish. I do that, I provide that service, and I've done that for over 40 people so far. But why would you if you've got someone in your law firm who's going to do it for you quickly and easily and without charge? I have had people coming to me to say my solicitor refuses to confirm my qualifying work experience. For reasons that I can see are not good, like don't know about it, I'm unsure about the SQE, don't trust it, and such like. Really, I can't think of a valid reason unless you think the person has you've got real concerns about their character and suitability for becoming a solicitor. That's an issue of conduct and perhaps should have gone through some HR sort of routes. But really, the SRA do not want solicitors to be holding back aspiring solicitors from qualifying. So they've actually said that they want to hear from aspiring solicitors whose QWE a solicitor is refusing to confirm. Okay, note that huge shift in the power balance between the firm and the aspiring solicitor. The SRA wants to know from the aspiring solicitor effectively if they're being refused confirmation.
The total shift, isn't it? Total shift.
Absolutely. And you may find that people come to your firm and they've already got 18 months of qualifying work experience confirmed. You're expecting to have them for 2 years as a paralegal. But they're going to qualify after 6 months if they're doing qualifying work experience. They're going to be saying, can you please confirm it? Actually, I passed my SQE1 and SQE2, as you know, and two months later or whatever, they're saying, I'm qualified now. This is going to happen because people can pick up their qualifying work experience outside of law firms. What is qualifying work experience? It needs to be the provision of legal services. Okay, and that's really about as far as the SRA goes in defining it, other than saying it doesn't have to be in a law firm, it doesn't need to be in English and Welsh law, doesn't need to be in England and Wales, doesn't even need to be paid. So it could be at the citizen's advice. It could have been some work acting as a paralegal in a company in Dubai or wherever. Indeed, you don't even need to come to the UK to do any of the qualifying work experience. So I've been helping people who have been working as a paralegal, often to a very high level, in a foreign country in companies. And there'll be an absolute credit to this solicitor's profession because they're already doing work which is equivalent to 5, 6, 7 year PQE corporate commercial work. So the SRA is really looking ahead and looking at the English legal system being a major player across the world. And yeah, the private law firm is only one element of the provision of legal services.
I think, as you say as well, it's just that power shift is so significant, isn't it? That's, you know, for people to be able to control their own sort of path rather than just wait for the training contract. It's such a change.
Absolutely. Now, the sort of soft skills that the SRA are looking to have confirmed, I'm not going to bring up the form, but there is a form that they've suggested to be used. But it's it's the soft skills of being a solicitor. I don't know about you, but I've certainly worked with people who were brilliant academically, but lousy solicitors. So it's the ability to be able to do, yes, legal research and drafting documents, but also communicate effectively, being able to gather information information effectively, analyze it, present solutions to people, picking up the ethical issues as they're going along, having business and commercial nous. So all of these things make up the qualifying work experience that the confirming solicitor is confirming the aspiring solicitor has had the opportunity of acquiring. Now, the qualifying work experience prepares the aspiring solicitor for the SQE2 exam. Qualifying work experience can be done before, during, or after the exams, but it has to be done the 2 years full-time equivalent has to be confirmed before they qualify. Now, there are exemptions that people can get. If they pass the LPC, they can ask the SRA for exemption from the SQE1 exam. If you're a foreign qualified lawyer, you'll be given exemption from the qualifying work experience because you're already qualified in a different jurisdiction. And there are quite a few wrinkles with regard to foreign lawyers cross-qualifying as solicitors of England and Wales, which is almost a webinar on its own. The focus of today's webinar is for law firms, and I'm trying to give you an understanding of what's going on here. Now, we've already talked about the shift in power here, and how you may have been used to having someone who worked for you as a couple of years as a paralegal, then you give them a training contract, so you got 4 years out of them before they qualify. That may be shifting, and people can vote with their feet. So how can you perhaps use things to keep them there a bit longer and making it a win-win situation? This is where I'm going to introduce you to apprenticeships. Apprenticeships have been around for a long time. The availability for the legal industry to use them is new, and that's come with the SQE. The SQE, the SRA was very careful to make sure that the SQE was written so that it fitted within the government's apprenticeship scheme, so that graduates can join the apprenticeship scheme as graduate apprentices, okay, after their degree. And it would be the employer who would be then deciding that the aspiring solicitor, the employee, be put onto the apprenticeship scheme. And they do that by reaching out to the training providers. Now, as far as I know, and I haven't looked this up recently, but when I did last look it up, the only people on the approved training list for the apprenticeships for the SQE was the University of Law and BPP. I don't think that's because the others are not good enough. I think it's because the government shut the new entrance to the training register in COVID and haven't opened it since, which to me sounds hugely anti-competitive, but that's a different story. The training provider, let's say it's BPP and the University of Law, will pick up then the process and take you through it. So why bother? Okay. The benefit for the aspiring solicitor is that the government, together with the employer, will pay all of their study, training costs and exam costs for the SQE. 95% will be picked up by the government, paid directly to the training provider. 5% will be paid by the employer, but the employer can get a credit so that that 5% is also paid. They need to get that from an organization that's paying the apprenticeship levy, which is probably not going to be a law firm because not many are big enough. But there are plenty of other big businesses around, just taking one off the top of my head, Travis Perkins or ICI or whoever, who will be paying the apprenticeship levy and may have spare credits. You get a credit from them, they can transfer it across. You don't pay your 5% either. So it's a massive benefit to the aspiring solicitor because they're saving a whole pile of money. You then may, if they're on an apprenticeship through you, they're much more likely to stay with you during that period of time. It's also not going to be 2 years, but 2.5 years, because they're not going to get their 2 years qualifying work experience in 2 years with you, because under the apprenticeship scheme, you've got to release them for 1 day, at least a week studying. So it's going to take about 2.5 years for them to get their 2 years full-time equivalent. If there's anyone from overseas who's listening, the apprenticeships only apply to people in the UK. I'm sorry, it's a taxpayer supported scheme. But you can see here that then you have them for a longer period of time. You get support from the training provider. And so it's a way of tying them in effectively, massive benefit to them, and it's creating a win-win situation. So do please look into that. I have put as much information as I was able to gather into this page of the website. So it's there. These guys, the Apprenticeship Support Service, are massively helpful and open 7 days a week, 8 to 10 a.m. So real help of that. It might be something that Clara can also chip in on, being an expert in recruitment and such like, or what have you. But it's something that's underused. Not many people use it. I was speaking to one of our client firms relatively recently. We do a monthly sort of networking small law firms forum thing, and they were saying they've taken this, seen it, and they've got lots of people this way because they saw the big boys are doing this, and the Magic Circle are. They've spotted this, they're putting their people through this. And so he said, I'll do the same. And he's got people much higher caliber than he would expect normally to get as a small London law firm on the apprenticeship, because they're saying, look, I'm going to come to you because I don't have to pay any exam fees. And that's brilliant. He's got them at least for 2.5 years. They might go after that, fine, but he's got good time out of them during that time. Yeah, so I commend that to you there. I mentioned ever so briefly foreign qualified lawyers. You can, as a foreign qualified lawyer, get exemption from the SQE too. There's stuff about it here, a form you need to fill in. As employers, it might be that you have some foreign qualified lawyers who want to cross qualify. You're unlikely to get exemption from SQE1 if you're a foreign qualified lawyer, but good chance of getting exemption from SQE2, which might speed things up, and you'll be exempted from the QWE element. Okay, I've romped through that. I've tried to make it relevant to you in the sense of how it's affecting you and your supply of talent, how you could use the apprenticeship scheme to help you with keeping them a bit longer, and the process that you would follow if you were being asked to confirm qualifying work experience. I'll shut up now and see if there were any questions, or if I've just managed to confuse everyone.
Well, I thought it was all fascinating stuff. We have got one specific question. Does the apprenticeship scheme cover the cost of the exams only, or does it cover the cost of the prep course as well? Because I know that's a big thing, isn't it? The exams cost one thing, but if you want to sort of prepare for them properly, then you probably want to think about the prep courses.
It will cover the cost of the prep course as well. But as I said, last time I looked, the only ones which were on the approved list of training companies, and therefore whose fees would be covered, is the University of Law and BPP. I haven't checked the apprenticeship tables for approved people recently, but that was my understanding when I did last check that. But yes, it would cover them. If you went with Barbary or QLTS, if they're not on the approved list, the government approved list, then the fees wouldn't be covered.
Okay, no, fine. And someone else has said that the most apprentices that they've seen seem to have come straight out of college. What about those who have finished a law degree? How do they sort of rate as compared to those ones? Because yeah, I'm aware of apprenticeship scheme that goes on for sort of 7 years and takes people straight out of school. How do those two sort of compare, and how do you end up in the end? You end up equivalent in the end?
It's the same scheme, but what you do is the degree counts as the first few years of your apprenticeship, so it doesn't you're joining part the way through, and that's taken as part of the first part of the apprenticeship scheme. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah. So it's sort of really about exemption, really, and how much you get off and how much you do on the job if you're coming straight out of school.
Yeah. So if you're going straight out of school, I think it's 7 years on the apprenticeship. But if you're going out of university, you're not doing 7 years because you've already done a number of years already on it. So you go in as a graduate apprentice.
Okay. And is there a specific amount of sort of years that it would cut off? I suppose you're saying it would be It is, because it's just 2.5 years then, rather than the 7, isn't it?
That's what when I spoke with, and I can't remember, I think it was with the University of Law, as well as with the apprenticeship scheme. That was what they were saying to me
Okay.
about it. So, yeah, you join as a graduate apprentice. The BPP or the University of Law will then pick up the process with the employer and take you through that. I saw that. Yeah, several top 50, and the Magic Circle firms are doing this already. The BBC, I saw something about a year ago where they were taking 7 on as graduate apprentices. So it's it's happening, it's being done. And I saw 1 or 2 actually of the big firms visit my page on here before then announcing what they were doing, which was rather fun.
It's finding the information, isn't it? Pulling it all together. I think with these changes, it's certainly a challenge. Another question, are you aware of any voluntary organisations that have been prepared to sign off voluntary workers QWE? You've sort of said that it's a possibility. Do the Citizens Advice Bureau or some of the, I guess you've got the voluntary sort of internal things at universities as well. Have you actually come across some who have been signing that off?
It depends whether there is an SRA regulated solicitor there. If there is, then that can be done. So it's not the organisation, it's the individual who's regulated by the SRA who does the confirmation of the qualifying work experience to the SRA. So it's down to their judgment always as to whether they feel that they can do that. Yes, voluntary organisations have done so. I've done so for people, let's say at the Citizens Advice, where there wasn't a solicitor to do the confirmation. So I have to do a little bit more work than, say, someone internal, because I haven't seen the work. I have to then speak with the supervisor. But I have confirmed people's qualifying work experience who have done QWE, so the provision of legal services through the Citizens Advice and through other voluntary organisations. The most interesting one was someone. Well, there were 2. There was one who's working that come to mind. One, the very first person whose QWE I confirmed, and I think was the very first person to ever have QWE confirmation accepted by the SRA, had done 1 year of her QWE working as an unpaid voluntary counsel to a charity in Belgium.
Okay.
She did the other half as a paralegal for a corporate law firm in Tel Aviv. So yeah, and then there was someone else who was working as a paralegal in a charity in Malaysia that was assisting people with the immigration process and obtaining refugee status under the UN.
Okay.
Lots of law, lots of international law, lots of skills that would be involved in a lawyer who's dealing with all of these things to apply to X, Y, and Z. So really the application of the legal services is much broader than I might have thought when I was just working as a foot soldier in a law firm.
Yeah, it really does extend it out, doesn't it? Definitely. Someone asking about rights of audience. Trainee solicitors have rights of audience in the county court. Is there an equivalent for aspiring solicitors?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would deflect to the SRA on that one. Yeah, I just don't know the answer.
You would think if the work dictated, it would be strange for the SRA to sort of take it away in a way. So you would think they would want to encourage people to get that exposure.
I agree. I'm just being a cautious lawyer.
Yeah,
saying,
of course,
well, I don't know.
of course.
I would agree. Because there is no status under the SQE as trainee solicitor. That's the thing to ask the SRA on. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Someone has said as well, and I've definitely seen this, lots of firms are still advertising training contracts. If someone is a recent law graduate, can they still do the LPC? Is that going to be accepted? Isn't the LPC still the faster route to the 2 for a current graduate?
2 questions there. So if they've passed their degree, yes, they can take the LPC. The thing is whether they can get a training contract. The LPC is quite expensive, and you still have to get a training contract. Now, part of the reason I think, why the SRA has junked the LPC is because it wasn't working. Between 20 and 40% of the people who passed their LPC couldn't get a training contract per year, which is a vast waste of talent, time, and money. There's also other issues about ethnic minorities and those sorts of things and such like. Also, no one ever failed their training contract, so I don't know how rigorous that was either. So yeah, so if you got your LPC, yes, you can qualify by getting a training contract if you can get a training contract. What I expect to happen in the next year to 18 months at the most is, instead of having many people applying for every training contract, you may find that there aren't enough applying for each training contract, because people are saying, why should I? I've already got 2 years qualifying work experience because I've been doing that here, there, and everywhere. When I pass the exams, I want to qualify. I don't want to wait for another 2 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, which is the fastest? Well, given what I've just said, that could end up being the fastest, especially if you passed your LPC. Then the SRA are highly likely to give you exemption from SQE1. You've just got to sit the SQE2. Now, if you've got your qualifying work experience, you might say, right, okay, so that's 9 months or 12 months before I pass my SQE2 and I'm qualified.
I do know people that have done that. Yeah, I absolutely know people who have done the LPC. They've been working as a paralegal for some time, which is the common, or was the common and the norm. So if they've been working, say, for 2 years as a paralegal, actually all they need to do now is the SQE2, and then they can qualify. It's sort of instantly, having previously thought they were waiting for a training contract. So for those people, it definitely speeds it up. And one could argue the cost of the SQE2 is the quickest way to just get over the hurdle and get qualified. So people are sort of choosing to do that themselves, definitely.
And beware, as law firms, this might catch you out. Because you thought you had the talent there for a period of time, and suddenly they're saying, well, I passed that, this has been confirmed, I'm qualified now, can I have an NQ salary, or else I've got a job somewhere else?
Yeah, if you've got teams of paralegals, you might find them depleted. Another question, do you have any thoughts on qualifying through the Silex route as an executive lawyer, and have you seen a rise in that route?
Possibly a fall in that route. I think that the SQE route now takes away, and I'm going to be shot down for this, but it takes away some of the reason for having the Silex route, because now you can qualify whilst working as a solicitor. And I'm not saying that Silex is any less skilled. I've had some employees of mine who were Silex and really, really good lawyers, but it's always, there's a perception that it's lesser than a solicitor. Well, if you can follow a very, very similar route now, then people probably, I think, are going to choose the solicitors rather than the Silex route. So I have been approached by people who've asked, can you confirm my qualifying work experience through the Silex route? It's a little more difficult now, because when I spoke with Silex about that, they said, no, it has to be the person who actually supervised the work who confirms it. Whereas with qualifying work experience, you can reach out to someone else. And so long as they can see the work and speak to the supervisor, who could well not have been a solicitor or a lawyer, remember, someone working in-house abroad perhaps, or something. So it becomes harder in a sense to qualify then as Silex than it becomes as a solicitor, ignoring the exams, of course. But from the qualifying work experience element, that's more flexible within the SQE route now.
No, definitely. Oh, someone's asking about the handouts of today's course, but it's basically all on your website, isn't it? As we said, so we'll definitely make sure we send out the link to that.
It'll be in the video, won't it?
Yeah. No, that's fine. And they're asking about, if firms phase out the training contract, is that likely? Will LPCs be forced to fund their own SQE? I think, from my point of view, I'm hearing that already. So yes, I think that is the case, but I think it's maybe the individuals are ahead of the curve and the firms are perhaps behind the curve on this. Would you agree?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. So I think Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that most LPC providers are going to basically not be teaching that from next year, although your LPC is still sort of valid for another 10 years or something, but they're going to phase out the actual teaching of it, which means that your, training contracts are going to be appealing only to people with an old LPC and not with the new qualification. And that's going to happen in, like you said, the next 18 months, really.
Yes, I mean, I can't speak for the training organisations. I've heard from various people that the universities are still pushing people towards doing an LLM to get the LPC and then do a GDL because sorry, controversial comment, but it does sound to me as though they're trying to make some money out of people who don't actually need to do the GDL because they could just qualify through the SQE route. There's no requirement for it. So I don't know whether people will push the LPC longer than actually is arguably ethically correct to do. It's obviously people's choice. But we are in this transition, and so my thoughts as to what's happening, I'm just an educated observer really as to what's happening here, but those are my thoughts on it.
No, fair enough. Someone else is saying currently they have paralegals who are studying the SQE and they're still referring to them as paralegals. They're worried that clients won't understand the title aspiring solicitor. Do you think it's better to refer to them as a paralegal stroke training solicitor, or do you think aspiring solicitor will become a well-known term?
I don't know. You can call them what you want. The SRA was asked on this and said, can we still call them a trainee solicitor? And the SRA said, yeah. It's not a term of art within the course. You can call them Fred or John if you want. It doesn't really
you could all of your paralegals who are studying could be referred to as trainee solicitors, and that would be fine as well.
I mean, to be honest, in law firms, we've done that for a long time. We've created associates, senior associates, junior associates. We've added in layers of hierarchy, partner, equity partner, and salary partner. There's nothing. I don't think there's any particular term of art there. We just made them up to justify salary bands or whatever. So, yeah.
I was wondering as well whether it's the clients that are used to the terms or the people internally who are used to the terms, because clients are probably, if there's a solicitor vaguely in the title, then they think, oh, well, they're a solicitor, and the trainee term is easy because they're obviously training.
Yeah.
Aspiring maybe could be arguably along the same lines. But yeah, I suppose it's whatever works for you, isn't it? Is the answer whatever works for you as a firm or for your clients or internally?
That's my understanding of how the SRA is approaching it. There's been no, as far as I'm aware, hard and fast ruling on this. But someone did ask, can we call them trainee solicitors still? And the SRA said, yeah.
No, fine. I haven't seen any paralegal roles being advertised as qualifying for qualifying work experience. And I think that firms are missing a trick there. Would you agree? Because I think that paralegal roles should be advertised as, this could be qualifying work experience if you need it, sort of thing.
I have seen it, and indeed I've done it myself. There's a Citizens Advice where I'm a trustee, and I said to them, look, you're looking for telephone tech savvy advisors. There's loads of aspiring solicitors out there looking for QWE. And so actually, if you go back through my posting on LinkedIn, and people are very welcome to connect with me, you'll see that I did put out a call to say, look, this organization is looking for advisors. This will qualify as QWE. Send me your CVs and I'll push it through to them.
Fantastic. So, yeah, which is a real, especially for something like that, for a voluntary organization that are looking for help, then like it's as you said before, it's a win-win, isn't it? Everyone benefits there by getting the experience and the sign off. So I think the biggest thing is people understanding that they can run their own training contract, for want of a better, but yeah, their own career. That's what it is. They're now in control of their career and the path it takes. It's not sort of so beholden to this training contract or firms giving them things. It's just,
yeah. And these guys can then do slots of hours that works for them and works for the organization, and they're going to be giving advice on housing, on immigration, on family and things like this. So it's going to be solid law.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? That is the thing.
And that's great when they come to the law firm, because they've got not only experience in that law, but of dealing with difficult situations, which, perhaps you get someone straight off an LPC course who's gone straight from sixth form to university to LPC to, they're wet behind the ears.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the time in practice, one could argue that was always a positive of the Silex route, was that you ended up with actual time in an office, was much greater than as a solicitor. And I think that's, like you say, it's important to have that contact, because it is the soft skills, as you call the client skills, and the handling problems, and just, responding to things is so important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. There will be a link to this meeting. It is being recorded, yes, and so everyone who attended and everyone who didn't attend will get a link out to the recording as well. So yeah, so I don't know if we've got any other questions at all. I think it's really interesting. One thing I was going to ask was, I've heard of a firm where they're doing, I don't know if it was a training contract or what it was, but they were dictating which provider was doing the SQE. So say it was University of Law, someone was with the University of Law and they said, no, we need you to go through Barbary. It was that kind of thing. I don't know why the firm was doing that, but have you come across that at all?
I haven't. Most of the time I'm operating, although I do some work with organizations confirming their employees' work, most of the time I'm working with people who don't have a solicitor to confirm their qualifying work experience. So that's why I'm not really coming across that. I would have thought it'd be pretty tough if someone is already paid for and part the way through a course and the employer then says, no, you got to trash that and then pay for another course. Yeah, if the employer is paying, then okay. But if it's through the apprenticeship scheme, then I can understand. But then it would be in the interest of the employee to do that as well as the employer. Yeah.
Yeah, because with the apprenticeship, because it's being paid through that scheme, then yeah, obviously that makes sense, doesn't it? No, fair enough. No, that's great. Well, so yeah, I mean, it is really interesting. I think it is just people understanding that this is happening, because I've definitely spoken to people who have actually, well, subject to getting their results back on the SQE2, have passed now and have qualified. And, it's now they're going out there as newly qualified solicitors. There is a lack of understanding that they are a fully qualified solicitor through the new route, which I think will change. But I was going to ask what's your thoughts on time frame, but no one has a crystal ball. But it has to be soon, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, the SQE2 was sat again is it 2 weeks ago? So the results will come out in a month or so. So there'll be another tranche of people who qualify. They are qualified as far as the SRA is concerned. They're the same as someone qualifying through the LPC training contract route. No difference whatsoever. It's just volume is going to tip it fairly soon, certainly the next 12 to 18 months, I think. So there's going to be less qualifying through the old training contract LPC route and more through the SQE2, possibly faster than that, because there's a lot of foreign qualified lawyers who are getting exemption from SQE2, sitting SQE1, bang, they've gone over. And maybe they want to then work in the UK or remotely in the UK, because there's another dynamic that's changing things, is the remote working. So yeah, which is another thing. You could say, okay, fine, I don't need to recruit on the basis of location, but rather on competence. So I could get someone from, I don't know, Hong Kong who knows the law, can deal with it, and they can deal with my clients overnight. So I can now provide a 24/7 service. There are lots of ways of thinking about this,
Definitely. And like you say, lots of people have got experience abroad, but yeah, if they just do the SQE1, then that's going to give them the sort of the technical side, and presumably then that does away with the QLTT, is it, the Qualified Lawyers Transfer Test? I mean, that seems like that would be overridden by this. Is that correct?
Yeah, QLTS stopped when SQE came in.
Okay.
So it does not exist any longer. There is a QLTS training provider who did focus on that, who have the expertise of dealing with multiple choice, because that's what the MCT under the QLTS was. But yeah, the QLTS scheme finished when the SQE came in. So foreign qualified lawyers sit the same exam as anyone else to qualify as an English solicitor, exams. So yeah, but there's a lot of them who are looking now to say, okay, fine, we want to cross qualify. Can we get exemption from SQE2? We'll take the SQE1 because we're already practicing, and then we can dual qualify. I think I saw a question pop up about dual qualification.
Yeah, that's what someone's just said. Would it be easier for dual qualified solicitors to get a position in private practice? And the answer is it should be. If you,
I have no idea. That's a commercial question. Possibly that's what our guests can answer that better than me.
I mean, I would say it should be if you can find firms who are understanding of the new system and aware of the new system, and happy to take it, as you say, as it is, that this is now the new way of qualifying and that you are fully qualified under that scheme.
Well, I mean, to be honest, a dual qualified lawyer before the SQE and after the SQE, it's the same. They're dual qualified. So I don't think it should change the dynamic at all, other than perhaps, and I'm looking at the list of guests here, what's your view? Because if someone is qualified as a lawyer in India and also in the UK, they're a qualified lawyer. So what would your parameters be for having someone who's solely qualified in the jurisdiction of England and Wales, or qualified in the jurisdiction of England and Wales and New York, for example?
It should be a positive and an additional thing, shouldn't it? Not a negative. It shouldn't take away, it should add. Yeah.
There'll be cultural things as well. So there's a lot to be brought into, cultural as in country cultural, but also culture of the firm as well. So there's a lot of dynamics to be taken into account when you're hiring anyway, as you all know.
Absolutely. No, well, that's great. And that's all the questions that have come through at this stage. So I think that's been really enlightening, and it's just really interesting. And I think it's great because, like you said, you've actually helped sort of 40 people or whatever sign off their QWE as well. So you have a good idea of what actually qualifies for that, which, as you're saying, is really broad. And it sounds like the SRA, it's their baby now, isn't it? So it sounds like they're quite helpful in terms of answering questions. So again, that seems like it's been a good resource for you. And if people do have specific questions, that seems like a good direction to point them in as well.
The SRA, that point you raised about the SRA, we do a lot of compliance work with law firms, and the SRA has changed over the years, and now it's much more approachable. If you have a question about ethics or about compliance, ask them, because they're not going to beat you up because they're asking you. Sorry, you're asking them. They'd rather you ask and get it right than not. So they are actually, although they are our regulators, they are on our side to try and make it work.
Absolutely. No, well, that's good. And so you've had that first-hand experience as well, which is good. So excellent. We'll say yes, we will send out a recording to I think there's something that says I've missed a question. Even getting a graduate apprentice isn't easy, as not many firms are doing the scheme. A graduate facing future decision about next step in their career, what do you suggest? As a graduate facing future career, what would you suggest?
Well, this webinar, amongst others that I do, and you guys talking to people you meet, all helps tell more firms about this, because that's the message. Getting the message out means that more firms will be offering the graduate apprenticeships, and then it can just gather speed and make it easier to answer your question there. It's got to be down to the employer doing it, but you, as the aspiring solicitor, you can educate them. By all means, point them towards my website. They can read the stuff there. If they need a reference point, I haven't asked him yet, but there is a firm, a partner at a firm who I'm sure would be willing to talk to you, so long as there's not too many of you. But he was singing its praises. It's really helped him. So it's a good news story, I think, the apprenticeship scheme is, because it's a win-win-win all the way around. The only people that suffer is us as the taxpayer. But yeah, so if you can get the training costs and the exam costs paid for by the government, whoopee,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, well, that's great. I'd say that is all the questions then, I think. And then there's lots of people thanking us for the seminar and saying it's good information. So I think, yeah, it's been really helpful. Thanks for coming online and
One
sharing your
thing,
knowledge and clarifying things.
my view is that this would count as CPD, by the way, if any of you are solicitors.
Ah, there we go. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm sure it would fall within the criteria for that. So fantastic. Excellent. Well, thanks for coming online and thanks for everyone for being here as well. We'll send out a recording. We'll send out a link to the website. And yes, thank you all for coming along.